Have you ever just stopped and thought about how incredible it is that we can talk? I mean, how does a baby's babbling turn into a full-on complex conversation? Well, that's what we're going to dive into today. The amazing journey of how kids, especially once they hit school age, really master language.
Let that sink in for a second. The most complex behavior in the universe. It's this little miracle we all perform every single day without even thinking about it. But how do our brains actually do it? How do we learn this impossibly complex skill? Well, to figure that out, we've got to start by cracking the code.
So, to really understand how we learn language, we first need to break it down into its most basic parts, its secret code. It all starts at the tiniest level with sounds. Linguists call these phonemes. Just think of them as the individual Lego bricks of language. Take the word bit. It's got 3 of those sound bricks, b, I, and t. Swap out just one, say the b for a p, and boom, you get a totally new word, pit.
Okay, so you take those sound bricks, the phonemes, and you start clicking them together. That's when you get morphemes. These are the smallest pieces that actually have some meaning. A morpheme can be a super simple word like I, or it can be a part of a word, like the prefix re, which, means to do again.
But of course, you can't just throw these pieces together randomly and hope for the best. You need a blueprint, an instruction manual. In language, that's called syntax. It's the whole set of rules that tells us how to build our words into a sentence that actually makes sense.
And check this out. Eugene walked the dog. Makes total sense, right? But what about the dog walked Eugene? Whoa. Same exact words, but a completely different and frankly kind of hilarious mental picture. That right there, that's the power of syntax. Order matters a lot.
Okay, so we've got the code, the sounds, the meanings, the rules, but how in the world does all of that get wired into a little kid's brain? This very question sparked one of the biggest debates in modern psychology.
In one corner, you've got B.F. Skinner. He believed it was all about conditioning. A kid says milk, they get milk. That positive reinforcement makes them more likely to say milk again. Simple. But then Noam Chomsky comes along and says, hold on a minute. He argued language is way too complex for that. He proposed that we're all born with a kind of language acquisition device already built into our brains. And the conversation definitely didn't stop there. Other thinkers added more layers to the puzzle. Piaget, for instance, suggested that kids have to understand a concept first before they can stick a word to it. And Vygotsky, he really focused on the social side of things, saying we learn language by talking with people who can guide us through what he called the zone of proximal development. Basically, the stuff we can't quite do alone yet.
All right, so with all these theories swirling around, let's bring it down to earth. Let's look at how this all plays out with 2 of the biggest language milestones for school-age kids, learning to read and, for a lot of them, becoming bilingual.
When it comes to reading, yep, you guessed it, another big debate popped up. You have the phonics approach, which is all about sounding out letters, cracking the code. Then you have the whole language approach, which is more about recognizing whole words in the context of a story. So, what's the verdict today? Well, we know now that the best way to teach reading is really a solid balance of both. Now, what's really fascinating is that for millions and millions of kids, this whole incredibly complex process of learning a language, they're doing it in more than one language at the same time. Get this. In the United States alone, we're talking about over 47 million people who speak a language other than English at home.
A great way to think about being bilingual is the iceberg analogy. The part we can all see and hear, the everyday conversational stuff, that's just the tip. But underneath the water, there's this massive, deep understanding of academic language and a whole host of cognitive benefits. And here's the really crucial part. Having a strong foundation in your first language actually helps you build that second language way faster.
But for some kids, cracking this incredibly complex code of language and reading, it just doesn't come easy. It presents some pretty unique challenges. And this is often when a learning difficulty is first noticed. So what does that actually look like? Well, a learning disorder just means a person has some difficulty learning in a typical way, and it's usually in a specific area. This is so important. It has absolutely nothing to do with how smart someone is. It's just about a difference in how the brain processes certain kinds of information, like for reading, or math, or writing.
And these challenges can show up in a bunch of different ways. Dyslexia, which affects reading, is probably the one you've heard of the most. But there's also dyscalculia, which messes with math skills, and dysgraphia, which makes writing really tough. There are even challenges that affect how our brains process what we hear or what we see.
So, the most important point here is, knowing that these challenges exist, how do we make sure that we're providing the right support for every single child on their own unique journey?
Well, in the United States, there is a really powerful piece of federal law called the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA for short. This law guarantees that students with disabilities get a free and appropriate education. It makes sure they get a fair evaluation and an individualized educational plan, an IEP, to help them thrive in what's called the least restrictive environment.
When you pull it all together, understanding these building blocks of language from the tiniest little sounds all the way up to the major laws that protect every learner, it helps all of us. It's a powerful reminder that every single child's path to communication is different. And that really leaves us with one final thought to chew on. How can we, all of us, get better at listening to and truly supporting every child's unique voice?